What's up, everyone? Back for episode 15. I know we took a little bit of a hiatus. I had a little bit of a power failure in Dallas, Texas. I was without water until yesterday, which is a little crazy.
Insane.
So we didn't get to film. We're back. We wanted to do a few episodes. We have a guest next week that we won't tell you about. But yeah, Blake and I are back. What's up, man? How you been?
I'm been good. I'm excited to be back. It's been a minute. It's probably been. I think we uploaded last week, so it's probably been a total of a month though since that one was actually recorded probably a month ago. So
I know people take me on Twitter every single day asking when we're uploading. So here it is. Trust me, guys, we want to upload like every week. The beginning of this year was tough, but we're going to get on a cadence. We're going to get weekly episodes. We're going to talk about things that are prominent in the industry like Clubhouse and Spotify. So more episodes coming at you soon.
Yeah, we're really excited, and yeah, I'm just excited to be back. I think for this episode, I thought it was I was thinking about it the other day, and I was basically like, I wonder if there's people that are watching this who maybe want to learn more about like you and I, and I was like, I know people know Reed as this person who manages MrBeast and Preston and Typical Gamer and these really big names, and started his own management company, but I thought, like, why don't we actually just talk about, like, who you are and your background and how you ended up in this world? Because I'm sure you've done other podcasts at this point or you've done other interviews, but, like, the fact that it's not on our own channel or we haven't discussed it, I think is worth diving into.
Yeah, it's probably something, and we need to do yours next. And, it's probably something we want to live on our channel. I know that I've done the podcast before about the background and where I came from. Maybe we can get a little bit deeper on, like, my philosophy for Night Media when I started it. But yeah, happy to jump in. Just let me know where you want to start. You want to start right at the sports agency, NFL?
I want to start with just like, growing up, did you have any dreams of being in this world? Or like,
oh man, we're going way
how
back.
are you thinking about all of this, growing up?
This world didn't even exist when you and I were growing up. Like YouTube was founded in 2005, and it really didn't become prominent until 2010. Probably like 2015, to be honest. But no, I had no idea. I played computer games. I played The Sims. I played Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. I played Roller Coaster Tycoon. Like, I was a computer gamer or a PC gamer, but I never in my wildest dreams imagined that I would be in like this position working in this industry. I just wanted to play football. And I know that sounds funny, but I mean, I went in high school, I was one of the best players in the state, and I just wanted to play college football. I wanted to play in the NFL, and so a lot of my time just went into sports and specifically football. And so when I was in high school, that was all I wanted, was just a college scholarship. And then to go play at North Dakota State and get that college scholarship, that was like my path. I had never even given any thought to what does my life look like after football. And I had a moment while I was playing in my junior year at North Dakota State where I was like, man, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I have no idea. All I've known up to this point is football. And that was a really scary moment for me.
Was that a moment of like, oh my gosh, I might not make the league, and now I need to think about my life after? At what point did you realize I'm probably not going to be a professional, football player?
No, I realized that probably the end of my freshman year in college. Guys are just built different at the NFL level. And, I had the pleasure of playing with a lot of guys that play in the NFL currently today. And Billy Turner is the left tackle for the Green Bay Packers, and he was in the locker next to me, and he is a massive human being. He was 6'9", 350 pounds, just a ginormous person, right? And so I also, played with Carson Wentz in college, and he went on to play in the NFL. I knew that I wasn't built like that pretty early on in college. The first day I walked in as a freshman, and I was small town North Dakota. It wasn't like I was coming from a huge school that played at the 5A level in high school. I was coming from a really small school in North Dakota. And I remember walking into the weight room my first day in college, and our fullback at the time, Tyler Jangula, he was actually benching. He was doing his three rep max on the bench press, and he did 435 pounds for three. And he made it look very, very easy. It wasn't like it was a struggle for him to get 3 reps. He repped them out very, very easy, racked the weight, and that's when I knew I was like, I am in a different world, and I better hit the gym because I am just not built like that. And so I knew pretty early on that the NFL wasn't for me. And then, that moment kind of came in my junior year when it was just me contemplating what I wanted to do with the rest of my life.
What did you end up studying in college?
I was an exercise science major, and I had a minor in psychology. Absolutely nothing that I use today.
No, I figured it wouldn't be like super relevant, but I was just curious,
Yeah.
like, if you ended up studying something that was like management or something that like was more broad and ended
No,
up in this world.
absolutely not. I actually wanted to be a nutritionist. Like I wanted to go into dietetics, and I wanted to get my
wow.
master's and become a nutritionist. And I started taking like all these classes and anatomy and biometrics or biomechanics and I just didn't enjoy it at all. Right? It's like, and I think most college students can probably relate with that. Is you're forced to pick a major when you're 18 years old coming out of high school. Actually, you kind of get 1 year. You get 1 year of generals in college, and then you have to declare a major. At 19 years old, you have no idea what the hell you want to do with the rest of your life. I had no idea. And so I just picked exercise science because, like, the joke in college was like, school's first, football's second, right? Like, that was like the joke. And it was like, you're here to play football, go to class, don't get F's so you're academically eligible, but like, let's play ball. And I played at a very successful university, but never really gave any thought to like, what do I do after school?
Man. And so I like, you're approaching, you have that junior year epiphany and you're like, okay, what am I going to do? You graduate. What happens after that? Like, were you just like, okay, well, I'm not going to be a nutritionist, not going to be a pro football player. Like, what happened after that and sort of, where'd your head go immediately after?
So I had to get an internship to graduate. And so I ended up meeting this person out in Virginia who put on these college all-star games. And I needed the internship, and so I ended up accepting it, and I flew out to Virginia to be an intern at this college all-star game. And I met a sports agent there. And he was like he wasn't like a sports agent that was representing a lot of NFL players. He was a guy that like really tried to find the Carson Wentzes, the guys that were playing at the Division I AA level or maybe the Division II level that he thought had the ability to play at the next level. And so I started talking with him about this industry, and I knew it existed. I mean, you and I have both seen Jerry Maguire. Like, we know what a sports agent is. I think most people listening to this podcast, I wanted to be like, after I met him, I started thinking about it a little bit. And I was like, man, like, I would love to be Jerry Maguire. It's like a sexy industry. I love football. I want to be around the game. I enjoy helping players. And so after I met him, I ended up going to graduate school in New York, and he was based on in New Jersey. And so he gave me an internship while I was going to graduate school. And so for the next year and a half, that's literally all I did. Like, I consumed every single book that Drew Rosenhaus, Lee Steinberg, like all these guys put out. David Falk, who was Michael Jordan's agent. I basically just consumed everything that I could for the next year and a half to just learn about this industry. And I kind of set myself up for a pretty good job as a sports agent after I moved out of New York City and moved to Las Vegas. And we were working with a lot of like NFL and Heisman Trophy winners and Hall of Famers, and it was great. And so I went, from undergrad to graduate into the sports agency world. It was a massive, like, it happened really quickly, but it felt right. Like, it felt right that I was finally leaving North Dakota for the first time in my life, going to New York City. My sister was already out there, and then trying to work as a sports agent.
Man, but like, you make it sound so easy, right? Like, there's so many people that just want to be a sports agent, right? Like, they graduate college, and maybe their entire time in college they were already reading all those books, and they're already thinking about being a sports agent. Like, what do you think sort of set yourself apart there, or like, just helped you break into the space? Because I know it's like you make it sound way easier than it actually is to break in to be a sports agent, because I imagine it is quite competitive.
Yeah. Okay. So when I got a little bit lucky when I went out to New Jersey and I met this sports agent, and he gave me an internship. But what I did understand was, yes, like you said, it's very difficult to get a job as a sports agent. These jobs don't exist. They're not posted on Indeed. They're not on LinkedIn. These jobs don't exist. It's a relationship game. So I knew that in my head, I was like, I not only need to like educate myself on this entire industry, but when I get the opportunity, when I eventually like meet one of these people that work in this industry, I need to be so sharp that they have to hire me. And so that's why I just like dedicated my life during graduate school for that year and a half to just learning the industry, studying the collective bargaining agreement. And then when I initially got that opportunity, and so I traveled out to Las Vegas, I was interviewing for different roles. I actually got, job offers to different like PR firms in LA, and I would drive back and forth from Las Vegas to LA. And what I wanted to do is I laminated my resume. I don't even know if people use resumes anymore. I laminated my resume, and I would sit in the lobbies at like CAA, William Morris Endeavor, like Rep One Sports, Athletes First.
Gosh.
And I would like wait for these agents to walk out, and I'd be sitting in the lobby, and I would just like hand them my resume. That was like in my head, I was like, I'm just gonna go approach them and try and just like start a conversation and build a relationship. So I'm from like middle and nowhere in North Dakota. Like how am I getting connected with these people?
Yep.
And so they wouldn't answer my emails, and so after a while, I was just like, screw it. I'm gonna go drive from Las Vegas. I'm gonna stay in LA. I'm gonna do this like once every couple weeks, and I'm just gonna show up at their offices. I got kicked out of a lot of those lobbies.
Was there anyone else there, like, or were you the only like crazy person to do this? Like, is this a common thing? Like, that is insane.
No, I was the only one. I would always talk to the secretary. They'd ask if I had a meeting. I would say no, and then I eventually got smart enough to be like, yeah, I have a meeting with Todd France today at 1:00, and they'd be like, yeah, Todd doesn't have you on his calendar. So I started like figuring out what agents worked at these places, and I would just say I had a meeting on the books. I never got in though, so I just kept getting like kicked out of lobbies, and then I eventually got an introduction to someone in Las Vegas. And that's like when I got my opportunity. We met for lunch. I talked about how dedicated I was to the industry, how I wanted to be an NFL agent. And he ended up giving me a shot. And so I got an internship in Las Vegas at a company called Fritz Martin Management. Still exists to this day. They represent a lot of big names in the industry. And so that's really how I got my shot as a sports agent.
Wow. And then like, past that, right? Like you finally break in, you think that this is like the dream job, or at least I imagine at the time you thought that was your dream job. Like, and then you then, leave and you start to manage a completely different world. Like, was it just like right after your internship in that world, you're like, okay, look, I think there's another opportunity and I should go and chase that? Or, how long did it take you to realize, okay, I should be going to a different space?
I actually enjoyed it a lot. I got to travel. I mean, the people that I got to work a lot with were, Barry Sanders, Marcus Allen, Tim Brown, Joe Theismann, and then I got to travel a little bit with like Richard Sherman and Odell Beckham Jr. Wow. It doesn't really get any bigger than that at the NFL level, and I enjoyed it. I think what I didn't enjoy was the recruiting process. Every year, obviously, the NFL draft comes around and all these agents are competing for clients, and you're chasing kids around like USC and Alabama and Mississippi. And that was the thing that I didn't enjoy, was the recruiting aspect of it. And it's a dirty game. It actually is a very dirty game of like money under the table. And I know colleges are trying to regulate it, but a lot of the agents are very good at hiding that stuff. And so I really wasn't a fan of like the foul play in the industry and how some of these clients were getting signed. Those are stories for another time. But outside of that, I really enjoyed the industry, but I then, started searching around on the internet. And let's back up to one other thing. What I really learned at that job was how to cold call. And this is like a lost art, I think. And actually, you don't really cold call anymore because nobody has phones. But my job was basically cold email, which is a little different because anyone can kind of just copy and paste. It's a lot more difficult to be like, okay, let me call this brand. Let me try and just have a conversation with this person out of thin air. And so I would do that every single day. Like we would just ring the phone and I would just call people to try and have conversations about our clients. That was like, I think that was probably the thing I got the most experience on, was just like how to generate relationships out of nowhere. Like just off of, hey, how are you? My name is Reed. And then just trying to generate that relationship and conversation.
Wow. That's, cold calls are brutal. I did cold calls for a little bit at Google, and oh my gosh, I remember just always being like, this is so frightening, and like praying that they didn't answer, because like it was like weirdly like you had to do a certain number, and I was like, please don't answer like this. I don't want to deal with this conversation. But so you do the cold calls, you do all of that. You start to really, I imagine at some point here, you start to realize like, okay, social media is becoming more and more important. like at what point did you even discover the world of YouTube, or like discover this other side of this industry, or lean into the gaming side of all this?
Yeah, Twitter came first. It was when NFL players were trying to lean into Twitter, and I had Twitter in college, but our coaches regulated it and really didn't let us go on it. And then it really started. I really started paying attention to it then. When some of our clients were using Twitter, and then I stumbled upon this group, and the group's name was Dude Perfect, and this was early. It was like mid 2014, I want to say, and Dude Perfect probably had like 2 to 3 million subscribers at the time, which then was huge. Today, that seems incredibly small. If you're like, oh, 2 million subs, that's nothing. But at the time, in like 2014, that was a massive channel, and so I started watching their stuff, and I think they had just done a collaboration with an athlete. I can't remember who it was. But in my head, I was like, I need to get Barry Sanders or one of our clients in these videos. This is great exposure. Like, this video got 1 million views. And so that's where my head went. And so I ended up sending them a cold email and just telling them who I was. Like, I think you guys should talk to this client that we have, because I think they would do really well in a trick shot video. They responded in 10 minutes with a phone number, got on the phone with them, just kind of, again, tried to develop a relationship out of thin air. And that's kind of how that conversation ended. It was basically like, we'll think about it, but not at this moment. But what I did start to do after I had that conversation was I just started to just search around on YouTube and see what else was out there. And up until this point, like, I never watched YouTube in college, so this was all very new to me. And there was a lot of interesting channels, but I kept coming back to this Dude Perfect channel because they were dominating in 2014. And so I ended up like having this vision of, and it was more along the lines of, where's the attention going to be in 5 years, not where is it currently at. And Twitter was doing well at that current moment, but I remember asking my little cousins, because that was like my test. I was like, let me ask like my cousins who are like 7 and 10 years old who Dude Perfect is. And I remember going home and I was like, do you watch Dude Perfect? Do you watch Dude Perfect? And to just see them freak out about Dude Perfect. And then I would be like, do you know who Richard Sherman is? Do you know who Barry Sanders is? And they'd be like, what? Who? Like, I have no idea who you're talking about. And that was like, wow, this is not only where all the attention's going, they actually are commanding this young audience that doesn't really care about professional football and professional basketball. Like, they're watching Dude Perfect upload videos every week. And that's where my mind went. I was like, this is where all the attention is going to go. And I ended up leaving the agency probably a month later.
Wow. That's crazy. And then, like, like, I mean, it makes a ton of sense. Like, I imagine, like, Dude Perfect at that time, I remember when they first started blowing up, and, this is probably when they were doing, like, their crazy, longest basketball shot of all time type of videos. So, yeah. That was, like, a real big moment for them. And I guess, after that, you realized all of that. Did you immediately say, like, to yourself, oh my gosh, like, I'm going to go and manage some YouTubers and go into this world? Or what happened next? How did you like then parlay your experience from the sports world? Because I imagine there weren't too many managers in the YouTube space at that time, and if they were, like, they definitely didn't come from the sports world, and like they were probably more of like just random friends managing these people.
It was all MCNs at that time. It was Maker and Fullscreen and Machinima. That's who kind of all these creators gravitated towards, was their MCN relationship. And then there were managers, but you're right, it was a lot of friends, uncles, parents. That's who was managing a lot of these creators, because it was still so new and there wasn't a lot of money being made outside of AdSense yet. There were some brand deals. Merchandise wasn't really a thing yet. When I met Dude Perfect, they weren't selling t-shirts, they weren't selling hats, they didn't have anything. It was just like making money off AdSense, doing some sponsorships, and that was the business. And so, no, I had no idea when I left that I wanted to be a manager. I just knew that I wanted to work with them. I was like, I literally just want to like provide whatever value I can to these guys, because I think that what they're doing is not only sustainable over the next decade, but I think they're going to be at a position where they can potentially be the biggest creator on the platform. And at that time, I can't remember who was number one. It was probably PewDiePie.
Yeah, probably
but
PewDiePie.
He probably only had like 20 to 30 million subscribers, if that. Since it was still so new. So yeah, I just started working for them. I packed my car up from Las Vegas. I drove to Dallas. I called my parents and told them what was going on, and they thought I was absolutely crazy. to give up my job as a sports agent of what I wanted to do for the last 3 years, and to just give that up off a whim and go work with this YouTube group. And my parents didn't even know what YouTube was. And so it was a hard conversation to have, because I didn't have any money at that time. They were supporting me, thankfully. And so I drove to Dallas. I started working with the dudes, and that's how it started. And then from that relationship, I stumbled upon Justin TV, and I just kept going down this rabbit hole of meeting other creators, and then finding out that there was a much bigger ecosystem on the internet than I thought there was. And I just jumped in head first.
Wow. When you were working with Dude Perfect, what was like your official role, or like what was your day-to-day like with them?
Yeah, it was all brand deals. That's all I did. I was like calling like the Chiat Days and the Fleshman Hillers, like these big agencies, and I was trying to help them understand why they should be allocating budget towards this YouTube channel, not to spend ads on pre-rolls and mid-rolls, but to like organically sponsor a video, which at that time was like, what are you talking about? Why would we pay this creator to sponsor a video when we can like buy a mid-roll or a pre-roll ad on their channel? And so that's what I did. I just sold sponsorships, and we ended up inking a massive deal with Callaway Golf. My one vision for them when I first started was, I was like, they're killing basketball and football, and they've kind of looked at soccer a little bit, but I thought they were missing a category that was golf, because golf was predominantly very old, like it's a boomer sport. And I thought there was a really cool opportunity for them to go to some of these unique brands that are, they skew very old in terms of who are buying those products, and appeal to a much younger demographic of who's probably going to go like start playing golf in high school or college. And so Callaway Golf jumped on board. I remember talking to their CMO about the deal, and I think it was his son or his daughter knew who Dude Perfect was. And like, that's how that deal got done. Wow. His kids were like more excited than he was. And he's like, if my kids know who they are, then this is the right move for us. And then luckily they had an agency at the time too, who like totally understood.
Wow. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Yeah. By the way, golf still is like a huge wide open opportunity on YouTube. Like even to this day.
I agree.
Like it's still so largely unexplored. And yes, we've seen Dude Perfect actually has some awesome golf videos, but it is still there's a big opportunity there. So that's amazing. So, you do the Dude Perfect stuff. You work with them. You go down the Justin TV rabbit hole. At what point do you actually decide, like, okay, I'm going to parlay like my agent side of this and try and be a manager or an agent or whatever like that means, in this world? Like, at what point were you like, okay, I'm going to try and be a manager?
Yeah, I started meeting other creators, and what I soon found out is that there wasn't really a manager in this space. Not someone that was like helping the larger creators. Like I said, there's, uncles and friends and things like that. But it was somewhat wide open outside of the MCNs. And at that time, the MCNs still thought they were the managers. They were very out of touch in where they were on the pecking order to that creator. Most creators saw them as an MCN, and the MCN saw them as their like manager of that creator, which soon changed. So I met a few different creators in the gaming space that were on Justin TV, and then they were transitioning to this new thing called YouTube gaming. And this was like in 2015. I think that's when Fwiz left Machinima to go work at YouTube.
Yeah, that sounds right.
In 2015, one of those guys' names was Typical Gamer. Still to this day, Andre dominates, one of the biggest live streamers on the entire platform. But at that time, I think he had like 400,000 subscribers. He was just like live streaming on YouTube because he wanted to transition off of Twitch. And he was like our first client that we started representing. I say our, but it was just me at the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you have other people at that time?
No. It was just me in my bedroom until like late 2017. That's when I hired my first play. But yeah, it was like Typical Gamer was making that transition, and he was our first client. And that's really how it started in late 2015. It was just, I saw a different vision of wanting to build a company around multiple creators. And he was one of the first ones. And then we really kind of established ourselves in the gaming space pretty early on, because fast forward a year, at early 2017, I met Preston. If you guys don't know, Preston's like one of the biggest creators on the platform now. He has, I think, 16 million subs on his main channel, which was a Minecraft channel when I met him with 2 million subscribers. He's now completely pivoted to different platforms depending on what games he plays and lifestyle content. But he was someone that I met in 2017, and that's when Night Media really started to take off.
Wow. I mean, crazy. And I mean, like, I guess for you, it's amazing because you just jumped into, like, you did your agents, your sport agent side of this, and then you spent some time doing the brand deal stuff at Dude Perfect, and then you're like, I'm jumping in. I'm ready to be the manager here. I'm ready to work with my clients. And like the managers that I talk to and that I respect the most, I guess, like within this whole space, are the ones that sort of like rise with their talent. Like they were there sort of on the ground floor, like Chris Aru and Logic, and that side of like that story is just amazing. How they were both sort of like at rock bottom and grinding up together. I think it's it sounds very similar where Preston probably was already pretty big at that point, but Andre and Typical Gamer, this piece of like, you're both still very young and early into this world, and obviously it worked out incredibly well for both of you and all of your clients so far.
Yeah, I mean, all like Andre, Preston, like Unspeakable, a lot of the people that I started working with in 2016, 2017 are now like at the top of their game in 2021. I mean, Preston and Unspeakable are like two of the biggest creators on the platform. I know we haven't got to MrBeast yet, but as you like go down our client roster, we ended up signing a lot of these, or I did in 2017, signing a lot of these people pretty early on before they really had hit that like crazy growth trajectory. And Preston, to that point, is 2017. He had a few million subscribers. He was all Minecraft. He had another channel called TBNR Frags, which was like his OG Call of Duty. He had been making videos since he was 14 years old. I met him when he was 22. So he was already, 7-8 years into this industry, and he had just had his blow up. But what people don't really understand is like, it doesn't really happen overnight. Even like certain situations like Dream and Corpse, like they've been doing this for a while. Maybe not Dream, but Dream's been in this space for
he's been studying for a long time.
And
like
he ran
he
a
was waiting to
Minecraft
strike.
server. Like he's very intelligent. He knows. He's been around the space. Like people just don't blow up overnight. And Preston and MrBeast and Unspeakable, like you can go back and look at their videos in 2015, 2016. They're really bad. But one thing you will notice is like year by year, their videos get progressively way better, right? Yep. And they all just have kind of grown into themselves, and it's been a lot of fun because I've done the same thing. Like I was, in 2016, 2015, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I was trying to learn with them. Andre and I were like doing brand deals, and we were like trying to learn together. Like, hey, what's this word in the contract mean? Like, I have no idea. Do you know? I have no idea. Like, it was just like a fun time because like we were both so like oblivious to like some of the things that were going to happen, but we were just enjoying the time.
Yeah, no, I mean it's amazing. I think we've talked about it at this point on the podcast around like you're really unique in that like the talent that you work with, you're not just thinking about like the short term side of it of like let's just focus solely on brand deals. You're like thinking about how do we turn this into like an actual business and run it like a business. Do you think even back then you were viewing the clients that you were signing in that way, or do you think in some ways like Preston and Typical or Unspeakable helped push you towards that over time because you're like, wow, okay, they are here to stay, and maybe it's not the same dynamic as like a Richard Sherman or someone who's going to retire in 3 or 4 years or 5 years.
Yeah, the philosophy pretty early on was like, let's sign people I enjoy being around. Because I was spending so much time with those guys and still do today that it was like I need to at least enjoy them. Like life's too short, and so that was like first how I would sign people. And then I had this moment. So I met Preston in 2017, and at that time like I'd played Minecraft, but that's all I'd known was like vanilla Minecraft, right? And he really opened my eyes to like this whole, and if you guys haven't seen the video, we just did a video on this, but he opened my eyes to this whole ecosystem of servers and monetizing servers and selling maps and all this stuff, right? And he used his YouTube brand to really grow that. And he wasn't the first one. Optic Craft, like Hector used to have a server. Like I started learning about this, like all these people that used to have servers. And that's when it kind of hit me that like, is this server business just the beginning of these influential creators growing bigger, sustainable companies? And that's when this was like mid 2017, late 2017. And that's when it kind of hit me. I was like, the last 50 years, like we've been really loyal to companies. Like when I was growing up, I was really loyal to Nike. I was really loyal to like General Mills. And I started thinking about this, and I was like, people are now loyal to Preston. Like, they will play on his Minecraft server over just playing like on somebody else's Minecraft server because they're loyal to him because they're his fans, right? And that was like the first moment I think I really realized that, you know, eventually like individual creators are going to be in the driver's seat to build sustainable companies. Not only because of brand loyalty, because they understand what their fans want. They're genuine, they're authentic. And so that was really like the first moment I was like, I not only think Preston's onto something here with this Minecraft server, I think the next like 5 to 10 years in this creator business are going to explode once creators realize the power that they have.
Yeah. No, and I remember you telling me, you know, back in the day, I think we probably met in 2019 or something like that, early 2019. And I remember you telling me about Preston's server stuff, and I was just like, what? That is, you know, brilliant. Like, that's such an interesting example of this world. And I guess, like, you know, we can talk about, you know, the bigger sort of, you know, breakout, which was then like when you found Jimmy or MrBeast. Like, what was that like? How did you find MrBeast? At what point did you sign him? You know, what's the story there? Because I think, you know, that was probably, you know, now it's looking back, you're like, oh my gosh, that was a really big moment for you. But like, how did you find MrBeast?
Yeah, I didn't find him at all. I actually, and this is how I met Preston. This is how I met Andre. Everyone's been through a mutual introduction, right? So it's the same thing with Jimmy. You know, I had a friend, Jobless Garrett, who's actually doing incredibly well on Twitch and YouTube, plays like Grand Theft Auto and different games. But this was in January of 2018. He like sent me a Twitter DM and he's like, yo, I have this creator that I think you should meet. You know, I just had a conversation with him a few days ago. He's small. I remember him saying this. He's small. Jimmy had like 1.8 million subs, but that was like small. But he's like, I think he has massive potential to be one of the biggest creators on the platform. And at that time, I was like, okay, hold on, like biggest creator on the platform. Like, let's calm down here. And then I started checking out his channel, and I watched him, you know, watch It's Everyday Bro for 12 hours or 24 hours and count to 100,000. And I think the one thing that stood out to me was like, he actually like I could tell he loved it, right? I could tell he loved making videos. He was doing it for a long time. But I still hadn't met him. So Jobless Garrett was like, hey, I'll just put you in a Twitter DM. And that's how we met. Jimmy and I actually had a weird moment about 4 months ago where we like went back to the first DM. We were like scrolling back and we're like, man, remember that? Like early 2018, like what a simpler time. And so that's like how I met Jimmy. He was on Twitter. We got on the phone a couple days later, kind of spoke to me about, you know, his business at the time was like him, Chris, and an editor who was a good friend of his. It was really small, and his mom was helping a lot, and she still does to this day, you know, with everything. And so it was an interesting conversation I had with him because he had this vision of where he wanted to be at the end of the year. And he kept telling me, he's like, I'm going to blow up this year. I'm going to be at 10 million subs by the end of 2018. And I just kept going like, yeah, sure, man, sure. And he's like, no, I'm going to blow up. Like, I understand how YouTube works. He's like, I've been studying it for the past year. He's like, I'm not going to say I cracked the code, but I've figured out why videos get suggested. And again, I thought he was crazy, but I was like, listen, I'm willing to help. You seem like a good dude. Like, let's get to know each other a little bit better over the next few months. I met his mother. We all kind of got along. And that's how the relationship started. We ended up working with Honey. He had a Quid sponsorship deal at the time. So he was promoting Quid for some of his videos. We ended up doing a Honey deal not long after that. And that's how it all began. Wow.
And so that was 2018, you know.
Yeah.
It's been a crazy rise, you know, over the past 3 years. And in some ways it still feels like he's just beginning. Like you've obviously built out so many different things with him, and I mean, he just continues to grow. How do you even like balance working with Jimmy and Preston? Like, it sounds like you work with so many clients. Like, how do you even balance that piece?
Yeah. And just another point too, he said he was going to hit 10 million subs at the end of the year. He ended up finishing the year at 13.6 million in 2018.
Oh my gosh.
So he did it. And yeah, it's been a wild ride. You know, Night Media's obviously grown a lot since 2018. You know, we have a lot of different managers within the company. We manage a lot of different clients. I don't manage a lot of people at all. A lot of my time is spent on like the 4 people that I personally manage internally, and Jimmy. has been on a rocket ship for the past 2.5 years. And as he's grown, we've grown as a company. You know, the philosophy of like creators becoming the new brands, like that really was like something that I thought about in 2018. And you're now seeing it with where Jimmy is and where some of our creators are and some of the things that they're launching. And I think MrBeast Burger, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but MrBeast Burger is like a good test of like what we think we can do over the next few years. And MrBeast Burger is one of many. We have a lot of different areas, like, you know, that we're probably going to push into. But yeah, in 2018, like, I had never envisioned his blow up like this. And to be honest, like, it feels like it was like 6 months ago. That's how quickly this stuff happens. Like, when I really think about how quickly he went from 2 million to 13 million to 37 million to 50 million, it happened so quick. And I know it's been, 3 years? It's been 3 years since we met. It just doesn't feel like that at all.
Yeah, I think when I met you, Jimmy was probably at, probably around that 13 to 15 million mark. And I remember just being like, he's going to be big. Like, you know, it sounds weird to say he's going to be big from there, but like, I remember having, like, if you followed him or you got to know him at that point, like, you had conviction that he was going to become massive. And like, he was massive by, you know, most standards at that point. But like, I think you and I both agree that he will be the biggest creator on YouTube. Like, that's like no question at this point. Like, there's nothing that can stop him other than himself at this point. You know, like, the rocket is off, and he's clearly going to another level. Jimmy is really unique because he really embodies what we were talking about before, where you've built businesses around these creators. You obviously built, you know, MrBeast Burger and that world, but like, how do you and Jimmy and your team even think about like what projects you work on, and like how do you, like, because there's so many different pieces for you at this point. Like, you have to manage brand deals, you have to also think about him managing his entire team and his production staff. Like, I don't know. Like, every time I talk to you, I'm like, I don't even know how you have time to do this like podcast. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, and Jimmy's, I think, called me twice as we have done this podcast. But
amazing.
I never thought I would be in the restaurant business. That's for sure. If you had said this a year ago, like, do you guys ever think you're going to launch a restaurant? I'd be like, why would we ever do that? So I don't do a lot of the brand deal stuff anymore. That stopped about 1.5 years ago. Like, we have people internally that handle that. My job now is, like, as CEO, is really transitioned from managing, doing brand deals, like day-to-day tasks. It's really transitioned to like vision, strategy, business development, culture. Those are like my focuses as CEO. Thankfully, I have a really amazing executive team, you know, with Ezra Cooperstein. You know, he was very prominent in like the foundation of Maker and the MCN, and then co-founded Fullscreen and went on to work at Rooster Teeth as one of their executives. And so he's been great. We have other executive members who are great. My days are very hectic, but they're great. Like, I can go from talking with someone about how we're developing NFTs to then working on a new menu item for MrBeast Burger to then jumping in a production meeting for a show that we're doing with a streaming service. Like, my days go in so many different directions, and I think that's why I love it so much. And I probably don't think about it as much as I should, like when I get home, because it's just, everything is constantly moving. It doesn't even matter the day of the week, because like all our creators film on Saturday and Sunday. Like, YouTube doesn't sleep. Yeah. And that's probably why I feel like I met Jimmy 6 months ago, because everything there's stuff constantly happening. I think what we really focus on internally at Night Media now is, as we think about like, okay, with our creators, it's, do we partner or do we build, right? That becomes the biggest question. And I know you and I talk about this a lot with all different kinds of categories. It's like, someone approaches us, we're like, very interesting concept, or like Honey or whoever, we're like, do we partner with a company or do we build a company? And that's like the hardest question that I've ever had to answer with all these businesses. And we had the same conversation for restaurants. Do we partner with McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell, or do we build a restaurant? This is the conversation we had, and we ultimately decided to let's just swing the bat. Let's build our own virtual restaurant service, and let's see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, there was a world where we were just going to partner with a QSR company, a quick service restaurant company, and not build MrBeast Burger.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I just respect you and just your entire team for is you're not always just taking the easy shortcut of, hey, let's go and get the brand deal or do the partnership, because it is easier, like
Oh yeah.
objectively it's easier for you to do that, and it would be quite lucrative. But I think you are one of the few managers that I've ever met that is actually open and willing to think about sort of the longer term and sustainability of like these creators, like Jimmy or Mr. Beast now has Mr. Beast Burger, who hopefully that brand stays and that restaurant continues for 10 years, and maybe one day Jimmy stops posting and you still have this amazing like restaurant that's still flourishing. Like those things are rare, and I think there's very few managers or just people in this space in general that are thinking about the long term, which I just respect you guys a ton for, because it's been amazing to watch.
One thing that really frustrates me is like when people are like, "Oh, what's the longevity of this creator? Like, how long can this creator last?" And we don't really ask ourselves that question. I think the question is like, can they have a sustainable career? Are they entertaining enough? Do they command audience? Can they build a community? And if they can do those things, then they have a long-tailed career. Like Jimmy, if for example, like he's been posting videos now for 9 years, maybe 10 years. He's the biggest he's ever been. I think he could have a decade left if he really wants to. But even then, like when he's done posting videos on YouTube, he's still MrBeast. He's still like one of the biggest digital creators and celebrities in the entire world, and he'll continue to do that, and he will pivot into being one of the most popular entrepreneurs of our generation, right? And I think we have a lot of clients that we internally manage like that are in that same vein of like, we don't really ask the question like, is this creator going to be around in 2 years? Like that's not the type of creators we want to sign either. So it's just like, it drives me nuts when people say that of like, oh yeah, this person won't be around next year. Because if you can build the right team around them, if they're entertaining, like I said, like I think a lot of people really don't understand that like creators now need to be built like businesses. Like you actually need to build a production company. If you want to be a top tier YouTuber and it's like you and a computer and an editor, it's going to be really difficult. You actually need to have a production team. Burnout is a real thing. Even if you have a team, burnout is a real thing. But when you can offload creative, editing, thumbnails, logistics, production, when you can offload all that stuff and just focus on like your videos, it's a whole different ballgame. And then when you can kind of peel that back and be like, okay, now this creator only focuses on videos. Now let's really think about what companies they're passionate about and how do we push into that space. And then what kind of team do we need to build around those companies? That should be like how managers are thinking. And this definitely isn't how a traditional manager or agent worked over the last like 50 years. It was like, sign the movie deal. They go film a movie for 3 months. I don't know what I do, but like, I'm just going to go sign another client, hopefully get him another movie. That's not where we're headed. Like if we truly believe that individual creators are the next brands, then all our time should be going into like building these creators up as big as we think they can be, and then building sustainable businesses that they're passionate about. That's where like new age managers' focus should be.
1,000% agree. And this is something you and I talk about, I mean, quite literally every day. I'm curious, like, because I'm sure there are people that are watching this that are aspire to be signed by Night Media or work for Night Media as a manager. Like, what type of talent are you looking for? Like, are you always looking for new talent, or like you touched a little bit on talent that has ambitions to run it like a business and be bigger, but like, how do you think about the talent that you're identifying?
Yeah, we have like 5 pillars internally that we talk about a lot. I'm not going to share what those pillars are, but it's like, what is a Night Media creator is basically the question we've always asked. And then there's 5 pillars associated with like what we think that person is. Now, each manager, now that we have 4 managers internally, have kind of developed their own style of people that they like to work with and creators that they see value in. So it does change a little bit manager to manager, but those 5 core principles always stay the same. And so me personally, I don't know if I'll ever sign someone else. Who knows? It's just a lot of my time is focused on running, Night Media and the clients that I personally manage. But just for some of the other clients within Night Media, like we're really focused on new niches that aren't specifically the biggest on YouTube yet. I think food is interesting. I think what Graham Stephan is doing in business is something that will continue to grow. I think arts and crafts, like we represent the two biggest arts and crafts channels, ZHC on the male side and Mariah Elizabeth on the female side. I think there's like this like whole like travel home improvement area is really interesting to us. And the one thing that has stuck out to me is I've been in like the depths of YouTube the past like few months is there's a lot of channels like from my neck of the woods that are starting to become really popular. Like the North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Nebraska, like farming videos or like kind of like redneck style, like pickup trucks and like going mudding. Like some of these channels are getting massive, like millions of subscribers, averaging millions of views a video. That's like the one thing I love about YouTube is like it continually just grows, and every year there's like a new batch of creators. And so we stay on top of all this stuff. But we're never going to be that like management company that has hundreds of creators. That's just not us.
Yeah, and I figured as much. And I guess like maybe just to wrap it up, like, do you have any advice for people that want to get into management one day, or like, I imagine there's quite a few people that are watching this that aspire to work for Night Media one day or become a manager in the creator space. Like, what advice do you have for them?
I look at passion. So I interview a lot of people. I actually don't care if you went to college, don't care what your college degree is. That's why I asked earlier, like, do people still have resumes? I don't look at resumes at all. I care about the person. I care about the passion of the person. Like, do they actually love YouTube? Are they thinking about like, what's the next social medium? Do they watch TikTok? Like, those are the things I care about. I think if I was starting over and I was trying to be a manager, there's so many creators out there that need help. I think, watching this podcast, reading other articles on, the creator economy, just educating yourself and then attaching yourself to a creator that you truly believe in that maybe has 100,000 subscribers and they need help. I'm telling you, there's so many creators that need help that could utilize a really talented manager that truly cares about them and will grow with them. That to me is how I would grow this. I would attach myself like I did to a creator that had less than 1 million subscribers, and I would grow with them. It's going to take time, like all things do, but you're going to be happy that like you developed these relationships and figured it out along the way by yourself, instead of like trying to go to the top, where I think most people are like, oh, I want to represent James Charles. And it's like, yep, great. But not realistic, right? It was like me as a sports agent. I was like, of course I want to sign Jameis Winston. Of course I want to sign this person. Wasn't realistic. Because the big dogs at the top, like Tom Congdon and, Lee Steinberg, like I said, and Drew Rosenhaus, like they're going to sign the best players every year. Some agent might slip in and sign a big client in the NFL draft. But there's a lot just to go back to YouTube, there's a lot of YouTubers and Twitch streamers and TikTokers that are going to have amazing careers over the next 5 years. You just need to find those people that you believe in, that you get along with, and just start working with them.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think just in general, like proving that you were able to find and identify good talent and help them develop, overall is always valuable. Like it's the most valuable skill set that you can have in this industry. And I think, the more that you can showcase that or prove it, rather than just telling someone that you can do that, it's just going to pay huge dividends throughout their entire career. So
what I thought was really interesting when I met you is you said that you were educating yourself on the management industry, and it wasn't just digital. You were educating yourself on music, sports. Like what were your takeaways as you looked at like these different management industries?
Ooh, I mean, overall, I viewed it as like, okay, my view is that managers have the closest relationship with the talent and the clients that they work with, which should make sense. Like that's fairly obvious. But like if that is true, which I think it is true, then managers are great people to get to know, like from a venture and investor side, because those are the people that will hopefully help you, help with brand deals for your portfolio companies, maybe invest in your portfolio companies. Just from that side, I was just thinking about it like I should just get to know more people, because I think if they have access, or they're the gatekeepers in some ways to the biggest talent in the world, then like I should get to know managers. The thing that sort of blew my mind was how many managers I met were so short-sighted or so focused on like, I just only care about this brand deal from Fortune 500 company. Like I don't really care about venture investments or thinking about building businesses for the creators or anything like that. And so I I probably talked to 100 managers, you know, over the 2 years exploration that I did, but like of those, I probably only talked to 5 or 6 still, you know, and then you know maybe 2 or 3 of those I talk to like regularly, which you're one of those, and so I think I talked to you pretty early on in that process of like getting to know people within the management space, and so like I sort of had the bar pretty high of like, okay, this is someone who's very aligned in how I think about this world, and that's like really my major takeaway is like you were just thinking about it, and like you and I were on the exact same page as far as like if I was to ever be in the management world, it would look a lot similar, like a lot more similar to Night Media than you know some other place that I'm talking to.
Yeah, well, come on over, man. We'd love to have you.
Oh yeah, nope. I'm good. I'm excited with where I'm at right now. But you know, maybe one day we'll find a way to work together.
And that's a good caveat. One of our next episodes need to be about Blake and how you got into venture, and because there's a lot of interesting stories in there that him and I have talked about offline, not on this podcast, that I'd love for him to tell.
Yeah, no, and I think you know in general, just to wrap all this up, like I think this was interesting for me because I learned a lot of new stuff. Like, and I've known you for, you know, 2 or 3 years now at this point, and I think in general, I hope everyone just enjoyed this and got to know Reed better because he's insanely successful in his world of management, but there are so many like hidden gems and golden nuggets within all of this, and I really do look up to Reed as like a manager and as a person and as a CEO, and so it's been amazing to watch his journey so far.
Well, thanks, man. That's very nice of you. It's been a fun position to be in. I learned pretty early on that being a top talent manager is all about access. I get access to cool people like you. I get access to amazing people that I work with on a daily basis. I get access to, like you said, venture deals and angel investments, and a lot of this is about access. And you understood that. You're like, if these managers represent the top talent, then they have most of this access. They're not only the gatekeeper, but most of the talent is like pushing these conversations to them.
Exactly.
Thus, like they're the ones in the know, not necessarily the talent.
Yeah, no, and I think you've done an incredible job so far, and yeah, I mean, it's one of the major reasons why I even wanted to do this podcast. You know, like is I think you and I have a ton of these really interesting conversations, and I'm excited that they're coming to light, and people are able to get to listen to them because I think these are all really interesting.
Yeah, and I'm excited to have the conversation about venture too, because I think a lot of people are going to learn a lot about the different sides of investing in startups and how you identify startups. Like I've always thought it's really interesting how you guys meet with so many companies but only invest in a few, and like what separates those few companies that you guys actually invest in. So yeah, we're gonna have to film this episode pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to film it, and yeah, I mean, thanks for watching this, everyone, and don't forget to like, subscribe, that whole world. But really, we appreciate you watching on a serious note, and we're excited to be back.
Yeah, and hit that like button. Appreciate you guys. See you next episode.